Catholic Charities to the Salvation Army to food banks within your local communities. They serve a great need. Individuals who are in need of food constantly on a weekly and daily basis. The federal cuts have gutted food banks as they face record breaking demands. Tyrone Bowman live. Let's talk about it right here, right now. According to KFF Health News, food bank shortages caused by high demand and cuts to federal aid programs have some residents of a small community that straddles Ohio and Nevada growing their own food to get by. For those living in Duck Valley, a reservation of about 1,000 people that is home to the Shoshone-Pate tribes. There's just one grocery store where prices are too high for many to afford, said Bradley Bowl, chief local director of a federal food distribution program for tribes. The next closest grocery stores are more than 100 miles away in Mountain Home, Ohio, and Elko, Nevada. And the local food bank's troubles are mirrored by many nationwide squeeze between growing need and shrinking aid. Reggie Primo, a community outreach specialist at the University of Nevada, Reno Extension, grew up cattle ranching and farming alfalfa in Duck Valley. He runs workshops to teach residents to grow produce. Primo said he has seen increased interest from tribal leaders in the state worried about high cost while living in food deserts. Here is a photo. I'm going to show you this photo. The Food Bank of Northern Nevada distributes produce and other items to partner organizations across the region. The food bank serves an average of 160,000 people a month, a 70% increase over its clientele before the COVID-19 pandemic. So here is a photo here. And I want to just show the photo. I don't want the article in the way. This is what a lot of people are doing. They have to go to food distribution centers and food banks in order just to be able to take care of their families. Some people even working a 9-to-5 job or part-time jobs still don't even have enough money to pay the utility bills, the mortgage, the gas, the electric, the rent, and buy food. Everybody is being hard pressed, Democrat and Republicans alike and in between, about these severe economic policies that have put high tensions on everybody. This is real, ladies and gentlemen. All right, let me get back to this article. So, Reggie Primo, a community outreach specialist at the University of Nevada, Reno Extension, grew up cattle ranching and farming alfalfa in Duck Valley. He runs workshops to teach residents to grow produce. Primo said he has seen increased interest from tribal leaders in the state worried about high costs while living in food deserts. We're just trying to bring back how it used to be in the old days, Primo said, when families used to grow gardens. That is true. And here's a photo by Reggie Primo, and a small team from the University of Nevada, Reno Extension as they host workshops on gardening and creating hoop houses, similar to greenhouses, to help those statewide increase food security. And this and the photo is courtesy of KFF Health News. All right, let's look at this photo right here. This is a pretty interesting one. It's like a greenhouse. You know, we have community gardens, and people need to start growing their own food. I know I'm going to start doing it. Create my own little greenhouse. Doesn't have to be big and spacious. It's just something that is going to be decent that I can work with. Food banks managers across the country say their supplies have been strained by rising demand since the COVID pandemic era. Emergency Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program benefits known as SNAP ended 2 years ago. and steeping food prices. Now they say demand is compounded by recent cuts in federal funding to food distribution programs that supplies stable food items to pantries nationwide. In March, the U.S. Department of Agriculture cut $500 million from the Emergency Food Assistance Program. $500 million? That's a lot of money. No politician is giving up their salaries. No politician is giving up their wage increases. No politician is giving up their benefits package. But they're taking everything from needy people. Quote, to do justice and show mercy, end quote. The excessive need for greed, the excessive need for more, the excessive need for people to boast about their wealth and be braggadocious about it and flaunt it is not what America is. Whether you agree with me or agree with me, that's your prerogative. Everyday people deserve to live with dignity. Everyday people deserve to be able to hold their heads up high, irregardless of race, creed, color, ethnic origin, where they come from. Everyday people should be able to have their basic needs met. The program, known as SNAP, has supplied more than 20% of the distributions by Feeding America, a nonprofit that serves a network of over 200 food banks and 60,000 meal programs. The coalition between rising demand and falling support is especially problematic for rural communities where the federal program might cover 50% or more of food supplies to those in need, said Vince Hall, Chief Government Relations Officer of Feeding America. Deepening the challenge for local food aid organizations is an additional $500 million the Trump administration slashed from the USDA Local Food Purchase Assistance Cooperative Agreement Program, which helped state, tribal, and territorial governments buy fresh food from nearby producers. As a matter of fact, I just finished writing an essay for one of my classes, with my English class, my law class, about homelessness in America. Quote, the urgency of this crisis cannot be overstated, Hall said, adding that the Emergency Food Assistance Program is rural America's hunger lifeline, end quote. Farmers who benefited from the USDA programs that distributed their products to food banks and schools will also be affected. Bill Green is executive director for the Southeast Region of Common Market, a nonprofit that connects farmers with organizations in the Mid-Atlantic, the Southeast, Texas, and the Green Lakes. Green said his organization won't be able to fill the gap left by the federal cuts, but he hopes some schools and other institutions will continue buying from these farmers even after the federal support dries up. I think that food access challenge has only been aggravated. I think we just found the tip of the iceberg on that. Quote, close quote, he said. Food Bank for the Heartland in Omaha, Nebraska, for example, is experiencing 4 times the demand this year than in 2018, according to Stephanie Sullivan, its Assistant Director of Marketing and Communications. The organization expects to provide food for 580,000 households across the 93 counties it serves in Nebraska and western Iowa this fiscal year, the highest number in its history, she said. These numbers should be a wake-up call for us all, Sullivan said. The South Plains Food Bank in Texas project, it will distribute approximately 121,000 food boxes this year to people in need across the 19 counties it serves, compared with an average of 90,000 annually before the pandemic. CEO Dinah Jeffries said the organization is now serving about 25% more people while shouldering the burden of decreased funding and food products. In Nevada, the food bank that helps serve communities in the northern part of the state, including the Shoshone Pointe tribes of the Duck Valley Reservation, provides food to an average of 160,000 people per month. That's a 76% increase over its clientele before the pandemic, and the need continues to rise, said Jocelyn Lantrip, Director of Marketing and Communications for the Food Bank of Northern Nevada. Lantrip said one of the most troubling things for the food bank is that the USDA commodities shipped for local distribution often are foods that donations don't usually cover, things like eggs, dairy, and meat. Eggs, dairy, and meat. Nobody wants to talk about this, though, do they? Wasn't this a big issue during the presidential campaign? The price of eggs, the price of dairy, the price of meat, the price of gas. This was a big issue during the presidential campaign season, but people want to, for some reason, forget about it. How can you forget about it when families are being adversely affected? Mothers can barely feed their children. Those who are working long hours, suffering from exhaustion, overworked, underpaid, and underappreciated. We're all in this struggle together, like it or not. 40% of people who sought assistance from food banks during the pandemic did so for the first time. Hall said many of those families have come to see their neighborhood food banks not as a temporary resource for emergency help, but an essential component in their monthly budget equation. In my neighborhood, every Thursday and every Tuesday, the streets are lined up with hundreds of people going to the local church, going to the independent food bank, and they stand out there for hours just trying to get the box of food that they offer. About 47 million people lived in food insecure households in 2023, the most recent USDA data available. Bull Chief, who also runs a small food pantry on the Duck Valley Reservation, said workers drive to Elko to pick up food distributed by the Food Bank of Northern Nevada, but sometimes there's not much to choose from. In March, the food pantry cut down its operation to just 2 weeks a month. She said sometimes they must weigh whether it's worth spending money on gas to pick up a small amount of food. Let me just say this is not enough for the rich and the wealthy and the powerful to just convene among themselves and laugh, talk about how much money they have and boast and brag. It's not enough for people to spend all their money just on frivolous things. What about the needy? What about the hungry? What about those that are suffering? What about those who really need food stamps? This is not a black thing. This is a people thing. How much optimism and motivation and inspiration can a person stand without seeing what I call results? When I start talking like this, people don't want to hear it. Well, they have to hear it. If it sounds preachy, then let it sound preachy. If it sounds like I'm speaking with authority, then let the authoritativeness come out of my voice. I'm on a mission to help humanity. That's why I'm becoming a lawyer, not to make money, but to advocate and fight for those who cannot advocate and fight for themselves. Children in America are going to bed hungry. Children in America are going to school hungry. And they're coming home to empty houses. And you wonder why the streets are lined and littered with people doing any and everything to try to eke out a living. When the food pantry opened in 2020, Bull Chief said it helped 10 to 20 households in a month. That number is 60 or more now. Made up of a broad range of community members, teens fresh out of high school and living on their own, elders and people who don't have permanent housing or jobs. She said providing even small amounts of food can help households make ends meet between paychecks or SNAP benefit deposits, whatever they need to get to survive for the month, Bull Chief said. Pinch food banks, elevated need, and federal cuts mean there's very little resiliency in the system. Hall said additional challenges like an economic slowdown, policy changes to SNAP, or other federal nutrition programs or natural disasters could render food banks unable to meet needs because they are stretched to the breaking point right now. A proposed budget resolution passed by the U.S. House of Representatives in April would require $1.7 trillion in net funding cuts, and anti-hunger advocates fear SNAP could be a target. It's not could, it's going to be a target. Social Security is going to be a target. More people living in rural parts of the country rely on SNAP than people in urban areas because of higher poverty rates, so they would be disproportionately affected. Talking about black areas now. And some of y'all in the comment section, you think it's funny, think it's a joke, because hunger hasn't come to your house, because need, lack, and want hasn't hit you. How would you like it if your child was out there prostituting themselves for a piece of bread by some dirty, filthy old pervert? How would you like it if your job was cut? If you went into your job tomorrow morning and you got pulled into the office and your person said, I have to tell you this, but we're making some drastic cuts, and I'm sorry to tell you, but today is your last day. You can finish out the day, but good luck. It didn't feel good, does it? How'd you feel if they cut your food stamps? How would you feel if you went to your local food pantry or the food pantry in your church and you know you needed something and it's not there? How would you feel if you went to the Salvation Army or the American Red Cross or Catholic Charities that people depend upon? And they say, we're sorry, we don't have any food, we don't have any money. We can't do anything to help people. You know, some of them need to go back and look at that old Christmas classic called A Christmas Carol, written by Charles Dickens, and understand the relative importance of what's important. Humanity is important. Caring for those who are less fortunate is important. Taking care of seniors is important. Adequate health care is important. Making sure people can retire with dignity, knowing that the safety net, the Social Security, is still there. Instead of money grubbing, greedy politicians trying to steal the hard earned money of millions upon millions upon millions of people who worked hard. Next thing you know, they're coming for your RA accounts and your 401ks. Oh, they're going to come for that too. Any and everything to try to justify what they're doing. Hunger in America is a serious problem. And on this program, I try my best to be responsible and accurate with good journalism. This is not a program to bash people. This is people to alarm people and to awaken people and to try to help people. And in closing, I'll put it this way. An extension of the federal 2018 Farm Bill, which lasts until September 30th, included about $450 million for emergency food assistance program for this year. That's going to be cut. But the funding that remains doesn't offset the cuts. Hall said he hopes lawmakers pass. They're not going to pass a new farm bill. I'm not going to even read that. We don't have a food shortage, he said. We have a shortage of political will, and that's a fact. Coward politicians on both sides. Greedy politicians on both sides. Lying politicians on both sides. At the expense of the needy. I'll continue to bring you updates on the most important stories here on Tyrone Bowman live. Kindly subscribe to the channel. I appreciate it. We got a long way to go, but we're going to get there. Thank you for watching. Thank you for all your comments, whether they're pro or kind of negative. As long as you're talking, I know that you're there. Never surrender. Never quit.